looking very good tonight. I think three strapping young gentlemen. There we go. They can't deport us all. Well, they can try, man. They can try. Maybe it won't be deportation. It'll be more like keep you in here. Just make you do the shit work.
You need a worker class. You always need a worker class.
Who was the Democrat thing? It was like, well, who will clean the toilets? Like, well, thank you. That's a fantastic.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, how non-racist is this? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, madams and sirs, welcome to a new 2-Bit podcast. This is a special round table with Caleb Brown and with Luis from. Sorry, Carlos. What am I doing, Luis?
Oh,
Carlos
come on! Hey, that's already racist. I thought you went straight to the first fucking Mexican name, Luis. Come on, Luis.
No, hang on. I will defend this. My long-term Venezuelan friend is Luis Patino, who will probably be watching this at some point, and you remind me of Luis because you're a beautiful man.
Carlos Luisans.
Trying to save this how any way I can. I am the white supremacist on the panel. Carlos from the Los Libertinos podcast have joined me today to answer the most important question on everyone's lips. Curtis Yarvin, friend or fed? So, gentlemen, introduce yourselves, and we're going to get into definitions, and we'll get right into the conversation. Caleb, start, and we'll go to Carlos, not Luis.
So, my name's Caleb Brown. I run the Face, Liberty, and Praxis YouTube channel. Do a lot of book clubs. I'm also the founder and head of Osteotomism. It's a website for Catholics who take one too many red pills. So, yeah, I like Yarvin. Ready to talk about him.
Yeah, my name is Carlos. I have the Los Libertinos. You could check that out. I haven't put any shows out because I had my 1-year anniversary show a couple weeks ago where I had an event here. But I try to put out shows every Wednesday. So the next one will be this Wednesday coming up. It'll be with James Pogue, who is the writer at Vanity Fair that put out a new piece with that was about Peter Thiel and Curtis and a bunch of these characters. And so check that out. And it should be a good one. I interviewed him last night, and I think you guys will like that. So yeah, check out Los Libertinos.
And of course, I am Jason Marinchuk, your Ukrainian host with the most. If you don't agree with me, at least support me, because support Ukraine. That's what's the most important thing here, folks. So we're here to talk about Curtis Yarvin, friend or fed. I wanted to define some terms here. Now, I'm going to kind of steal Matt Erickson's idea about feds, saying that you don't have to be on the payroll of the Fed to be a Fed, meaning that you can be doing the work of a federal agent or a government agent or regime agent of the regime. Without really necessarily being on the payroll. So as Curtis Yarvin is now becoming from a distant, weird little pocket universe of the internet with his work, Unqualified Reservations, and now with Grey Mirror. He's now had the piece in Atlantic. He's now been on Tucker Carlson on the internet show. I think it's only a matter of time until he's on Joe Rogan. Because he's been on Michael Mall's the Benjamin Boyce interview he did just recently this week. He got 10,000 views. Like, he's getting there. He's getting that sort of that rub. So the interesting thing, I think, and I'll pose this question to you boys, and then I'll stop talking, is so I'm trying to figure out how the regime's going to deal with this, because at the heart of Yarvin's work essentially is about overthrowing the regime and creating a new regime that basically cancels out things like Harvard, things like large swaths of the deep state, as we call it. I was saying to Caleb before we started recording, like, his idea is not to just drain the swamp. You drain it, you pave over it, you build a new structure on it, and then you forget about the swamp existing altogether, right? And you move on and you call it a new thing. That's at the core of Yarvin's work. So it'll be very interesting once he hits the mainstream to see if they're going to try to destroy him. I mean, the leftist, we already kind of know what the leftist response is going to be, but is the core regime going to try to destroy him, or are they going to try to incorporate him? And either way, does that make his ideas either toxic and they try to disappear it, or does he become mainstream and become essentially a Fed by default? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that's is the question of what is mainstream nowadays, because there's what used to be mainstream was obviously anything that was pushed by the regime in the radio news, CNN, that kind of stuff. I don't think that's mainstream anymore. So if he becomes mainstream in the new mainstream, not the legacy mainstream, is that something that is going to be mainstreaming reactionary type ideas, or is that going to be too? Is the mainstream still too controlled by the regime to so they can try to control it? That's my kind of take on this. Like, I don't know if the mainstream of today is actually still regime controlled or still has so much regime influence. And so I know because Joe Rogan's mainstream, but he's very I can't say the word, opposed to like the current regime. And so I don't know if it becomes mainstream, is that going to be equivalent to say what Fox News mainstream was 10 years ago? I don't. That's my kind of issue on this one.
Carlos.
Yeah. So to kind of like lean into what Caleb said was that what is mainstream, and yeah, you know what I don't know if when you guys did you guys ever see the Curtis Yarvin Tucker Carlson interview that they had together? So when I saw that, uh, it was kind of like you saw two pace setters meeting each other, right? So one is mainstream and then one is underground. And I've always kind of looked at Curtis kind of like, I don't know if you guys ever, I mean, I played in a band in high school and shit like that, and after high school, and I could always fuck with both worlds, right? I always liked the mainstream and hung out with those people in high school, and then I can go hang out with the people that were listening to the hardcore underground whatever music. So to me, it's like the same music. It's just Curtis has packaged it in a new way that sounds underground, right? So the feds or the bureaucratic class, they've seen this happen over and over and over again. There's always new ways of how this they get attacked all the time, but they're not going to go anywhere. So as a if you were in that type of mentality as a Fed, I would think that they'd want to embrace some of his messaging, because even though you said that he wants to like destroy the Harvard class and all that, I don't think he wants to destroy it because he comes from that. I think he might have even said that he wants to set them free, and instead of being part of the cathedral class, and where even though they're not intertwined and they have a top down like do this do that, we all know that they're structured in a way that they just have an understanding of how things should go. He just wants them to be free. So if they're smart, they would embrace some of his messagings to say, yeah, we don't mind getting retired, right? He has this idea called RAGE, which is a retire all government employees. And if I was a federal a Fed guy, and I was maybe like, I wouldn't mind getting retired and then going and doing my own shit. Like, go, you already have one stream of income from the being retired. Hey, I also want to go do something else, So strategically, they should embrace them, because they're still going to get paid. Nobody's saying, he's not coming out and saying, fire all federal employees. He's saying retire. So, I don't know what they will do, but I would think that they don't lose. So when you don't lose, you just have more options to play it differently. So that's kind of my take.
It's actually one of my problems with. Oh, go ahead.
No, sorry. I think that's the strength of Yarvin's argument has always been this. He's playing on multiple streams. I think with Unqualified Reservation, his early work, it was very much more blatant and a bit more piss taking, because he's playing out some ideas. As you've seen in Gray Mirror, he's become much more structured, and I think that's a lot to do with his involvement with Thiel, because he's basically buddying up with Thiel quite a bit, and Thiel to me is a very interesting character. Now that I've got into Girardian medic theory quite heavily, he's Thiel is there's a great book called Wanting.
What is that? I don't know what that is. That theory.
So René Girard was a French anthropologist who was professor. I think it was at Brown. I might be wrong on that.
Okay.
But he came up with this theory of memetics and sort of mimetic desire. So
okay.
There's multiple facets to this, but to do a really quick one is he believes that all desires are external. So we generate our needs from internal needs, but our wants are always generated from outside of us. We don't know what to want, right? And you see this early on with children. So children will begin to mimetically model themselves after their parents or after any authority. So as you tell them what you want, a clear example is this, right? And we've all done this as parents. You'll see kids who, if you go to a drawer to get plates or you give your attention to something, your kid you'll see you're giving you that attention to that thing, and then they'll want that thing, right? They don't know why they want it. They don't know what's in that drawer or what's in that cupboard, but they just want it because you go there, right? Like obviously it's got something that's valuable or interesting, or else you wouldn't be doing it. So his whole theory is that because these desires are external, we look for models, and whoever can be a model for that desire can move millions, because we all fall in line with that desire. Now, you can have a diversity of desires, and that's actually probably the more optimal thing, which is what the free market basically did, is allowed for a multitude of desires all at the same time. So you have, let's say about cars, right? You can have a bunch of luxury cars, but they're all luxury cars, like a Ferrari and a Lamborghini. You can have the debate of which one's better or not, but they're both luxury cars. So people can buy more stuff, right? They can disperse their desires across a greater field. When those desires become centralized and become then there might become a scarcity. Then you have desire competition. Then you have things. So like, let's say we'll talk about power, because we'll bring it back to what I think Yarvin's greatest contribution to this discussion going on right now is power. No one talked about, in terms of post-libertarians or anyone, no one was talking about power the way that they're talking about it now, pre-Yarvin. Yarvin brought into a conversation about power and how to look at power and how to look at your relationship with power in a completely new way. And it's new in terms of it had been going on since the 19th century with Carlyle and the rest of it, but it hadn't been happening in the 20th century that much. Maybe with Burnham, but he brought into a new lexicon of thinking about these things, and the conversation changed. And I think that it's actually changed the desires of people for power, and it's changing our relationship to that. And in a sense, as much as Elon Musk has become a model for truth in some ways, and people are modeling themselves towards that truth because he's tapping into the desire for truth. I think Yarvin's tapping into that desire for power, and to have a relationship and have an honest relationship with power, rather than this made up bullshit thing that we've all inherited. Does that make sense?
Yeah, dude. I mean,
sorry, that was
no. I just take it in a little slower because I have to take it in. Yeah, man. So when you say bullshit relationship with power, and he's making it more real, is that like that? Are you trying to say like our as a society, how we think that democratically we have any power by voting? So therefore, he's like, you know what? Don't worry about voting. Just have a monarch, have a king, and then just worry about your own shit, kind of thing. Because or is that kind of what you're saying? Like that he's bringing that into the mix, or
essentially,
is that kind of what you're saying?
Essentially, because I think what people are speaking out about, and I think this is what's hitting the bricks right now, is that they keep going out and protesting and burning down things and whatever that, and then so imagine if you're on the left, right? Imagine you're a relatively nominal Democratic voter, right? And you get sucked into agreeing with Antifa, and I remember friends of mine in the United States, who are basically defending Antifa, going, well, but I'm an anti-fascist too. Right? It's like because that's the level they're dealing with this stuff, even while cities are burning down, and they do all that stuff, and the result is to get Joe Biden. Like, you burnt down cities, you squandered your time and energy and principles, and all you got was Joe Biden. Like, how is that making sense to you? Like, how is that a relationship to power, that you think that your vote and on all the things you did and supported, or maybe you didn't do, but you supported them, ultimately led to a crumbling, decrepit form of democracy, and in terms of a leader that's like Joe Biden? Like, from Trump to Joe Biden is insanity, right? Like, and I don't think psychologically people can deal with that. So I think the stage is set for a new relationship to power and a new relationship to understanding. I think what we could say is the best government, the best life for people, for it would be like 99% of people to be unaware of politics whatsoever. Like they would just be completely unaware of it. It would just be working,
It's like that meme.
and-
There's a meme and it was like it was like democracy. It was like my president's better. No, my president's better. Monarchy. The king's retarded. Yeah, I know. It was just that's the goal, was maybe not to care.
Yeah. So
Exactly.
so what I think that Curtis is doing, which is good, and sometimes, like I was saying, that like the underground music sometimes just needs to come up so you can, you know it inside when you hear it. You're like, man, that sounds pretty good. So what I think that he's doing, which is something that I've been doing now as I talk to my friends and family and all that, is just normalizing the idea and the conversation of hierarchy through like the monarchs, right? So yeah, the idea that most successful or any type of company or anything that's worth a shit is usually framed up in a hierarchy way and a monarch kind of style. That was not part of the normal conversation. So just to have that type of conversation with anybody, most people, and again, like I say, when you hear that jam, you're like, oh yeah, that sounds good. Most people will not say no to that, whether from whatever side of you're on the political spectrum. So once most people are nodding their head and like, okay, yeah, yeah, then you can scale that up or down to individual realms of your own home, or scale that up to government, and that's why when I heard, so before I got into Ron Paul, I was like into like sovereign citizen stuff, right? Like I would look up all this stuff on like Magna Carta and like all that kind of shit like that. And then obviously I didn't do anything with it, but I understood the idea of like common law and shit like that. Okay, well, so that to me is like the same jam. It's about like being like your own individual sovereign and shit like that. But you can scale that up, right? So he just put those things together. So it was good to me. It just came natural that I can talk to anybody about it. Just came natural to me because even though nobody had ever put it in words the way that he has. Or at least for me, but I think it's for everybody. We always could see these hierarchies in society and everything. We just never really thought about it in that way, or at least I never did. I just thought shit just was the way it was. But yeah, of course, my father, we had a small business. Of course, he was the head of the business. And then you look at other businesses. Of course, it's the head vato or whatever. Like it's always set up that way. But we just never had when you say a new relationship with power, it's a new relationship in the way we deal or talk about it, but it's an old relationship with power. It's just that now it's becoming mainstream, or it's going to be talked about in that way, which I think is good because there's nothing that bad comes from it because it is reality. Most shit is set up that way, So what are you going to do? It's the way it is.
100%.
Like I think the only tools the regime has left really to like alienate people is either A, kill them, or B, they're white supremacist fascists, and that doesn't really work anymore. So unless they're going to go and kill Yarvin, he's going to become mainstream, and all they can do is claim, oh, he's a racist. And they've exhausted that card so much, it's not really alienating people anymore. And so I don't know if they really have any. I think the real question is if Yarvin becomes mainstream, does he become the guy who's like, so here's an example. Jordan Peterson, before he started his own podcast, was the guy behind pretty much the intellectual behind all the mainstream white people. They listened to him and they used his stuff. But when he started his own podcast, he became kind of less good. Will Yarvin become like Ben Shapiro and get his own podcast and be the forefront guy that everyone dislikes, or will he be the guy who's occasionally does a podcast, writes a few papers, and people go, "Oh yeah, I'm going to use that in my work." So what will he become? Will he become mainstream like Shapiro, or mainstream behind the scenes? That's what I wonder about Yarvin.
He sucks at podcasts.
Yeah.
He's gotten a lot better, right? He's a lot better. I remember the first video I saw of him, other than the Michael Malice stuff, which is how I got introduced to him, was Base to Lose, where he's like talking at like behind a bar somewhere, and he it was when he was like in full stutter mode, right? That whole thing, and like I tried getting my co-host Mark to listen to him because I'm like, this guy's brilliant, but he's really hard to listen to. Read his writing; it's way easier to read, right? and I think his writing is way superior than his verbal presentation. He's gotten, and like I said, like he's gotten a lot better. But he's still, even the Benjamin Bowie's thing, like it's he's still very awkward. He's like he's a very nebby Jew, you know. There's no nice way to put that. And I think he can be off-putting, but and so to get to your question, it's how the left is going to deal with him, because that's my biggest question. Is that the left is generally speaking left, other than like Peterson and a few people who they attacked on certain vectors. I think they're just going to say he's a racist, and that's going to their thing. But they tend to try to ignore certain people. Like James Lindsay, they don't really engage. They kind of just try to ignore him and bury him and just pretend he doesn't exist. I think they might try to do that with Yarvin, because he's intelligent enough that they can't really deal with all his ideas without bringing them to light. And he's crafty enough that he can kind of fight with them a little bit. So I don't think they're going to go direct with him. I think they'll probably just do he's a racist, blah blah blah, white supremacist, and then try to ignore him.
What's great now is that the right doesn't have a national review that's going to cancel right-wing people. Yeah, we don't have a centralized right thing that cancels good right wing like Paul Gottfried, like Samuel F. Francis, like all these good right-wing people. The last person the right was able to cancel was Milo. You know, they haven't been able to cancel anyone since then. So I think with Yarvin, there's a chance here where he'll actually be. There's no way to. The left won't be able to cancel him, and the right doesn't have any centralizing power to cancel someone. So I think it's like there's really no good way of stopping him at this point.
Yeah. What do you think, Carlos?
No, man, he's gonna go mainstream. You know, like just like all music that is underground, and once it hits the mainstream, then it's gonna be, you know, cool. A shirt with Curtis' face on your, you know, to jam, you know, who's that? Oh, you never heard of this Vato? Oh, this guy believes in monarchy. Oh shit, you know, what do you mean? And then, you know, everybody wants to be in the underground scene, and especially when it goes mainstream, because you get to catch that momentum going up. You know, I'm not hiding it. I in talking with this guy yesterday, James, at the end, you know, because he dropped a lot of names, right? He was like, oh, what's his name? Tucker Carlson texted me about this article. He said it was great. Chris Hayes texted me on this article. He said it was great. Yeah, and I talk to Curtis all the time. So, you know, at the end of the conversation, I was like, hey man, just so you know, I'll talk to all those motherfuckers, you know, so let them know. And he's like, yeah, I'll text them. I'll let them know to come do your show. Okay, I'll take that momentum and ride with it, you know, shit like that. So you know, he's not going to get canceled because he has a momentum behind him. You know, you could just tell that there's going to be a lot of people that are going to ride it with him. And when you see someone like me, right, that isn't white and shit like that, like they're gonna be like, oh, you know, it's not about that. It's beyond that shit, you know. So you know, I don't think that he will get canceled. I think he'll go mainstream, and it's gonna be interesting to see how it plays out. And you know, like I said, the idea of monarch or being a sovereign or a king and all that, everybody wants to be a king, you know, at your home, wherever you can, you know. So
dig into that. But let's dig into that, right? Because that was one of the first things that when I first encountered his work, and I was still coming out of a liberal framework, and I'd been transitioning for a few years, and you know, doing right-wing puberty blockers and all that. But I was coming out of that, and when I encountered Curtis's work, I was like, aha, right? Like here's something that someone's saying that is not anything like I've heard before. And I don't know if it's a solution, but it's certainly a new way of looking at the problem. And that creates a massive rush of fresh air into your both intellectually and I think even spiritually, where you can go, okay, whoa, what the fuck is this? Because I've been raised to believe that monarchy's evil, bad, backwards, blah 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 blah. Liberal democracy is just progressive, intelligent way to go with science and all that stuff. Even though all the fruits of liberal democracy have been fucking awful. I mean, not all of them, but we can talk about the whole 20th century in terms of world wars and stuff like that. That's all liberal democracy. That wasn't monarchy. And we can start then looking at going, okay, but there are structures here that make sense to me both as a man, as a father, as a husband, as someone who's in the society who, and it's not because I want to have sovereignty over women or everyone else. I remember being accused of that one time. I was like, what are you talking about? No, I just don't want to this be a massive bag of lies. Like, why are we lying about structures? Why are we lying about wanting a weak person to lead us? Why do we want Joe Biden, who's obviously has lost his mind, and is a crumbling old man? Why do we want all these old people who are incompetent, or even young people who are incompetent, like Justin Trudeau, to keep doing this shit? Like, there's no leadership here. It's bad management. It's like having your country led by a bad day manager at Arby's. Like, it's horrible, and we all know that, and we all sense that. So when you get in touch with Yarvin a little bit, and he goes, "Here's a new idea, right? Monarchy," and you're like, "Well, I'm listening." Like,
Yeah.
it awakens something in you. There's a feeling to that. There's a tactile yes to that, which I think is, we're talking about desires and going back to Gerard a little bit. That's the thing, right? If you hearken onto a desire and you can model that desire in some way, people start to move, and they will start to mimic everything that you think or everything you do, because we don't know what to want. But it's like, well, why not a monarch, right? And that's an interesting thing. That'll be a very interesting thing for the mainstream to try to digest.
Yeah.
Go
Go ahead. Oh, man, sorry, my bad.
Yeah. I think what's really going to be interesting is if will Yarvin go mainstream, or will neo-reactionary as a whole, like Owen McIntyre, Solomon, AA, Radical Liberation, if these guys will follow along with him, or if they'll still be dissidents, they're still going to be in the far right kind of ignored category. And I think that's going to be really how will his mainstream affect the rest of a lot of these new neo-reactors are doing some really great work, some really good content, putting out a lot of great ideas. A lot of them kind of move past Yarvin. And so I wonder if there's going to be like, oh, Yarvin's mainstream, now let's flock back to Yarvin a little bit to kind of catch that wave. Or if they're going to see, no, we don't agree with Yarvin on these things, come to us instead. Like, I wonder how they're going to react to. Because I can imagine a lot of people, when they see him go mainstream, are going to fall back into that very typical, they're going to probably create a term Yarvinite, and they're going to just follow Yarvin around, and it become a weakening of what neo-reactionary is right now. So I really want to see how his mainstream is going to affect everybody else.
Yeah, so I would, listening to you guys, I thought of maybe someone that tapped into something inside of our, and I guess it was mostly for vatos, right? For guys, was like Jordan Peterson, right? He tapped into something, some truth that was just, hitting on all cylinders, right? So when he went mainstream, they rejected him because, I would think that women in power or any any influences, weren't really liking the idea of that of his style. But Curtis's style is, he's not suggesting that there can't be a queen of he's not breaking it down to it's a male thing or clean your room, guys. Even though, I went to a Jordan Peterson speech. He came here in San Antonio. Yeah, it's mostly dudes, right? It's mostly guys, and the women that go there, they're mostly with what I'm saying is that it's a message. It was a message that was more for like dudes, And although Curtis's message is mostly consumed by vatos, right, like us and shit like that, it doesn't sound like it could be for anybody, So no, like I really think that it's gonna go mainstream where. So I don't think it's going to be as easy to cancel, but I don't know. We will see, right? It's fun for us to kind of to kind of like check it out, right? We're like front row at the novela show, right? We'll see how it plays out.
Eating our popcorn, like, because I mean, exactly. I have no idea how this is going to turn out. My prediction is this, and I think the left's position and attack vectors are we know what they're going to do, right? They'll go back to to some of his blog posts. They'll find the questionable stuff we talked about, slavery and so that. They'll expose that, and they'll go and all his followers are incels. We know it'll be the Atlantic article, but all the negative stuff turn up to 11, right? It'll be all the condescending shit turn up to 11 plus because they're going to just try to defame him completely. But I think that has a diminishing return now. Elon Gate, for example, now the whole Elon thing where apparently he propositioned some stewardess on SpaceX, it's actually meeting a massive amount of pushback.
Didn't even know about that.
Oh, it's a new thing. Yeah, I know next to nothing about it. I just saw some headlines on it before, on Twitter. But
everything's a gate now. Watergate happened. Everything's
but the thing is, we see this and go, oh, sure, he's doing something with Twitter, something high profile, and then they found something to attack him on, and this is their attack thing, right? Like, okay, right? And it's becoming less and less useful for them. So I think as the left is getting weaker, especially in the cultural zeitgeist, because it hasn't been working, go woke, get woke, go broke is now becoming a confirmed thing with Netflix and all the rest of them basically telling their employees, like, yeah, if you're woke, you may not have a job here. You may want to go elsewhere. So something's turning in the zeitgeist, and it's a very interesting time for Curtis to get into that mainstream, because if he gets into that mainstream right now, it might be at a time where the entire mechanism is like, yeah, we need something new. We need to flip this thing to save our skins. To either get the golden parachute and get retired, or and so I guess this goes back to the Fed question. Does the Fed take this energy, like generate this energy behind Yarvin and the new right, and then take it and incorporate it, and then turn it around and wear it like a skin suit, which is typically how it's done before. But it doesn't have to be that way always. Like FDR changed things. Woodrow Wilson changed things. He changed the fabric of the makeup of how this government works in the United States. So you can have figures like that, and I don't think Yarvin's going to do that himself, but he could be the guy who informs people to change things, to be that kind of, in terms of it, he might mean being a Fed. He might make being a Fed a good thing, like in a weird way.
Well, when a lot of bands go mainstream, they sell out. Well, so you guys think Yarvin will sell out, or you think just say Yarvin?
Not Radiohead.
Good point. I'm not a big music guy, and so I only know bands by names. I can't name a single song of really any underground band. Like I listen to Frank Sinatra, and that's about it. So I don't know any music stuff. But you think Yarvin will sell out, or do you think his followers will sell out? Like, do you think if he was mainstream, is he get off? Is he already a part of like this old progressive intellectual class? Those are his people. He likes those people. Is there any possibility he sells out to kind of be part of that group again, or go back into that group? That's what I'm wondering now.
No, you sell out, man. You take the money. You sell out. I always like the idea. I don't know. I think it was Metallica, right? When they asked, "Oh, you guys are sell out," they're like, "Yeah, we sell out every show that we go to." No, yeah. You sell out, man. You put the money in the bank and take care of your family. You do whatever you got to do. I mean, when people start calling you a sellout, you're doing some shit. So whether they like it or not, you're doing some shit, man. So this guy that I interviewed yesterday, James Pogue, he basically said that the guy that to look out for, and I asked him, was this the Senate guy, J.D. Vance. He was in that he's running for Ohio Senate, and he said that he's the one that you could tell has ambition for the presidency under these ideas of the umbrella of Curtis Yarvin, Peter Thiel, and so we got to check that guy out. But I don't know if you guys seen his commercial. He has an ad that he put out where he starts off by saying, "Are you racist? Do you hate Mexicans?" And to me, that right there is already like I respect that because I already know what the fuck. I already know what you're doing, Vato. I know exactly what kind of crowd you're playing to by starting off, but it wins. So you know, you can win with this message, that type of messaging. But yes, under the umbrella of this Yarvin, style monarch stuff. Yeah. So yeah. I mean, so they won't attack him as being a candidate, but they're going to attack anybody that wants to be under his umbrella. And people just have, after Trump, since he's out of the mix, there's not a lot of there's not really. Well, I guess there always is always someone that's painted as the bad guy, right? It's always like, let's just say right now it's Tucker or anybody, but it's always good to bring new people into the wrestling match, right? What do they call it? Kayfabe, right? It's always good to bring in new people into the mix because it just creates new ways for people to click, right? To fearmonger, to get traction and action to the journalists' websites and all that. So it's all part of the game. It's just that this one, I feel this messaging of the monarch idea just has a different feel to it because people can't really attack it because even if you're a lefty, like whatever, I mean, whatever, you live in a monarch style structure, so you can't really say or attack it like you would other types of systems. So it's going to be interesting.
Well, here's the underlying desire that's happening here too. Is that the underlying desire that is bipartisan is that we are not happy with this current system. No one's happy with the current system. Period. Right. And it's shown between. I mean, you can't say the left is happy with Roe versus Wade being overturned. Like we're all unhappy for different reasons, but we're all unhappy. And so to have someone to start to bring out a desire for a regime change in the West, we'll start centralized in America for this conversation, but it's certainly the West in general, because if it happens in America, it might happen everywhere else, and that's what I'm so very, very interested about. Because we might be on the precipice of something massively changing. Now, that may not work out for you, me, or the other, and for our families. Who knows how that shakes out? I'm trying to divorce myself from expectations of results, like how it might. So I'll put this question. This is more of an open question. It's like I'm trying to get my head around the idea that even if something disenfranchises me, but enfranchises my children or future generations, that still might be a good thing, even though it may not be good for me, right? Something that I may be uncomfortable with or not want to live in, or may exclude me from society, might still be good for my kids in 20, 30, 50 years or whatever have you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I need to be focused on. It doesn't have to be about what I want. It's what I think is best. And what might be best may not be best for me. So it's a weird place to it's a weird headspace to put yourself in, because obviously you're always motivated by your own self desires and your own desire to have the things you want to have, but the things that you want to have might be screwing up the future for your children. So you try to balance those things out. I think that's the whole monarchy thing, which will be interesting to see how people get their heads around it, because monarchy obviously won't work into a left-wing paradigm, but it might save the future of humanity. So it's like, what are you on board for? Do you want to win, or do you want to win?
You know what's funny, man? When I explained this stuff to my wife, right, and mostly in the last probably year and a half, when I kind of say, like, I've kind of transitioned away from trying to get into the daily roundup of political stuff. I've been it's just now with the podcast that I have, I've just turned down the daily. I used to get into like federal budgets and foreign policy, like all this, everything that was going on. And I told my wife like why I kind of turned that down and focusing on putting more energy towards. I always put the energy to the family, but just a little bit more focus on all that. And it was funny because she was like, "Yeah, that's why I'm not into politics, because that's what I've been doing forever. So it's funny, like maybe our women have actually been the monarchs of our homes without us even knowing. Like they have this shit figured out for ages. While it's just like, oh, here's our husbands. Go let them play that political game. We'll run the home here. Or when her reaction to that, I was like, oh shit, you've been. In my head, I was like, oh shit, you got this shit already figured out. I just figured this out like in the last year and a half, and you already knew about this stuff, but it was internal into her, So I don't know. I don't know why I brought that up, but it was just interesting that
No, it's
I'm
pertinent.
hearing that her self talk. They already have that shit figured out, It's funny,
It reminds me of this quote from Sir Robert Filmer at the first kings were the patriarch of the family, which also makes the first queens what's the word I'm looking for? What's the matriarch of the family? Was for the first moms. So it's very pertinent. It makes sense.
Well, you need both, right? And I think this is what's coming through the tradcons and neocons. These are the tradcon movements, which is something that Yarvin doesn't address. This is where we're moving. I think we're moving past Yarvin in the last few years. So it's interesting that as Yarvin becomes mainstream, many of his core followers, academic agent, a whole bunch of others, Aaron and stuff like that, have already moved past him. Have moved into orthodoxy, moved into religion. I think the religious aspect now, the religious pull, is something that's not being talked about, but it will be talked about in the next 10 years because it will gain steam. Like we're starting to see those early hit pieces of NPR. We're starting to see those early kind of feelers out towards it, but no one wants to deal with it right now because it hasn't really materialized. But I think the pathway between Jordan Peterson to Curtis Yarvin to Orthodox religion or Christianity or something like that is almost a straight line. Like you pass through those gates, and as you pass through those gates, you're trying to get to a purified element of truth, and that's the biggest desire that's being modeled. The biggest desire right now in the world is give me the truth. I want to know what the fuck is going on, and I don't sugarcoat it. I don't want it easy. I want it hard. Give it to me. Like,
yeah, I mean,
no,
this is
post-Libertarians, right? You already post-Libertarian.
yeah, man. Well, orthodoxy, right? Why the fuck would any rational human being, myself included, choose orthodoxy? It doesn't make sense. You want to go fast 2 days a week and sometimes fast for 6 weeks in a year. You're doing all these rituals and you're praying goddamn like 12 times a day. Like it's not a rational. It's not something you go, well, that seems like a good thing to do. You do it because it's hard. You do it because it's sacrifice. You do it because it's suffering, and you're doing it because it's true. There's a truth in the suffering and the sacrifice that I think, again, if you take Yarvin's ideas and you extrapolate them, how do you get the king? You get a king from worthy people. Like you need to have you need to have an idea of worthy populace for a king to arise to want to rule them justly, not to screw them, but to rule them justly. It requires a good people, and I think that's the return. That's how we're getting this sort of weird horseshoe, is that we need to encourage human decency on the ground up, to encourage a king to arise. Otherwise, we're just going to get more of what we have.
Absolutely. It's something about man was made man. The teleology of man is to worship God, and God is truth. So every man has a desire for truth, and I think that's when the big danger of this whole, a lot of this, the relativist philosophy of the left is that the current age that truth is relative, therefore there's no need to actually desire truth. But people intuitively kind of know, well, that seems like bullshit, because it is bullshit. They know that, and thankfully it seems to be turning around now. People go, well, I want truth. I don't. If you think truth is relative, you don't know what truth is, and people actually are seeking it now. I think that's a great thing to see, and I'm looking forward to seeing where that develops along the line, how it goes down further, and yeah, it's something great.
Yeah, I in my this 1 year anniversary episode, I had Bug Johnson and Matt Erickson here at my home, and I asked them about the Orthodox path that they've taken, and yeah, it was interesting. I kind of said that that it was like a form of time dilation, where that orthodoxy or Christianity is a way that when you're in that realm, time has slowed down while the rest of the world just keeps going. But in that inside of that realm, time just goes a little slower. And I kind of made the joke that I'm not very religious. I say that my wife prays so good that I don't have to. That
There's actually room for that in the Orthodoxy, by the way. There's some priests
Same in
who basically said
Catholicism. There's a lot.
as long as one person in the family prays devoutly, you don't have to worry about it.
Oh, you see, I didn't even know that. So I already got that shit figured out. But what I said, it was like, you know what,
bitch, we got you. We got you. I mean, we
yeah. So what I say is like, I'd rather just drink my time dilation, and
Yeah.
I don't have to be tapped into the orthodoxy, but I'll just drink myself into a time dilation and just kind of slow down and but that's just I'm joking around, but not really, like I was definitely drinking a lot of time dilation last night, and I'm just going with the flow,
Brother, I realized about 2 years ago when I had my spiritual calling, essentially. It was a very rude awakening. But I realized at that time, I was like, I would rather be a piss poor Orthodox Christian than a good atheist. I think that even being a bad Orthodox practitioner is still better than being the best atheist on the planet. And not even talking spiritually, just like mentally. Like you can try to bear fruits, and you can basically tell your children. Like I hit a wall of trying to think of how to explain to my child how to develop moral systems and principles, and why would you stick through this? Don't lie, except that the whole world lies. So obviously lying is good. Like, why wouldn't you lie if the whole world lies? You have uh, everything in your world is informing you to lie. Why wouldn't you lie? What's the system that says that? What's the holding principle to that? And I didn't have an answer to that. Like, you don't find that in secularism. You don't have those. I think that, and again, to say that this is the fall off part for Yarvin, and where I think people have gone farther, is that Yarvin's desire for a right wing structure, but a left wing libertine social existence can't exist. You can't have the two things. I don't think. I don't think it's historically backed up. I don't think I'm not trying to push a theology, but I think you got to pick a stream and go with it, because you can't do this whole like, well, we're going to be very, very hardcore right wing structure, but everyone everything else under that is okay and it's fine under the sun. I don't see how those things work, which might be the ultimate hardest sell, because it's going to take responsibility to accept that system, and I don't know how much people have rejected personal responsibility to the point that they might find that almost they might almost be sort of allergic to it now.
There was something weird I would say, like about people rejecting responsibility. I have a friend who was very like, he didn't want kids, he didn't want family, he didn't want any of that. He got a girlfriend, proposed to her, got a house, and now he's all talking about he wants to have kids. There's something about like, once you get like, it's like a drug almost. So once you get your first taste of actual responsibility, you immediately want all of the follows with it. What's get conspiracy theories, maybe why the government's trying to destroy housing market so much, but like, once people get a little bit of responsibility, they immediately want the rest of it. They're like, oh, I like this feeling of responsibility. How do I get more responsibility? It's almost like it's a drug. If people can get responsibility, then they want more of it. So to go is to like make people responsible for their own actions. My biggest point is the government, like, as he moved responsibility from people. It's like, why give the Syria? The state would take care of it. Why do this? The government would do this. Why care about this matter? The government takes care of that. The government, as he moved people, is carrying responsibility, and it's kind of this, and the culture does the same. It's really disgusting.
Yeah. So one thing that I also kind of took get from the Yarvin stuff, and this was kind of mentioned in with Matt and Buck here at my house, was that people are already essentially voting for a king, and we do this every 4 years, with the president. So all we're doing is just aligning things in a way where it allows whatever, whether you're left, right, whatever, it just giving you space to focus inward into your own to your own life. So I know you guys are saying like, oh, it won't work. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Who knows? You know, if it will work, if you can have a right hierarchy structure, but let everybody do their own thing. Uh, I tend to fall under that type of vibe. You know, like I'm too focused on my family to worry about somebody else's lifestyle or whatever they got going on. But it's the space. I think you had said, Jay, like there's a space where you can play in. Well, when people accept the idea of like having somebody run the country like a CEO or like a business, or in that fashion, you're going to basically have more space to play in. And the playing part is what's most attractive because everybody likes to play. Now, when I say play, I mean really like a kid mentality, but with responsibility. You know, like, hey, what do you mean? I don't have to really care about who the king, like all that 4-year bullshit and this cycle about. But there's already a person that's handling shit. Okay, cool. We get to focus on this. You know, so I think that there's a lot of good that's gonna come from this. But again, right, we go back to like we shall see. And yeah, like yeah, we'll see if Top Lobster starts making some Yarvin shirts, right? I mean, you could already see that already coming to you know what I'm saying?
I'd be surprised if they're not in his store anyways. Okay, guys, we have 10 minutes left, basically. Let's wrap this up. Any final thoughts on Curtis Yarvin, friend or fed? Let's get our thoughts. We can share our thoughts on both the positive and negative. I think we've done a lot of that groundwork. But final thoughts on Curtis Yarvin, friend or fed?
I think he's a friend. I think it'd be very weird to me to see. I don't think it's possible. I think it'd be very weird to see him kind of. I think his ideology is bigger than him at this point. That's actually one of my favorite things about the new reaction. He said that everything he did became bigger than him, which is a big problem with a lot of ideologies that wrap into one person. Because his ideology is bigger than he is. I think even if he became a Fed or he went down, the ideology and things he pushes would still impact more than he will. And so I think there's very few ways it can be where he destroys all his work or destroys the effects he's had. I don't think it can be done, honestly. So I think he's a friend over Fed. But if he became a Fed, wouldn't be the end of the world.
Yeah, so I would just say that he's a little bit of both, and that's uh, 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 being in that space between both really gives him the ability and the to maneuver and actually do circles around both, not just go directly to each way, but actually do circles around all these ideas. And uh, and I don't think that he's uh, going to be friendly to the idea that 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 the Fed system that we want to end it like completely, like our idea, but maybe a small government people is like, oh, we want to get rid of all that. He's not going to be friendly to that idea because he comes from that world. But the fact that he's not going to be friendly to that idea is that it allows also us to understand that we shouldn't be so hostile to the idea that these Fed people or anybody like that, we probably know a lot of people like that work for the government, that work for, they're just people in the system, they're characters in the system, and he's just kind of going to make like give us a new canvas to play on. So I would just say that he's a little bit of both, and I'm okay with that.
I'll second that. I think he's going to be a friendly Fed. I think he's not a Fed yet, but I think he will. I think almost the best possible outcome of this is that he becomes a new Fed, like to create a new kind of state of being in terms of a federal agent or operative of the regime, is to replace the regime, which is his cornerstone message. Again, it'll be very interesting to see how that gets adopted and how that changes. We're in a state of change. This thing's getting changed one way or the other, because it's either falling apart or being revitalized or renewed or whatever. I don't know, man. I have no crystal balls. I'm hoping to get past my 72nd birthday. I'm 45 this year. Like, I got less years now ahead of me than I have behind me. I'm okay with it. But I just kind of hope this thing shakes out better for my kids in some ways. That the West can get its shit together and stop being self-destructive in the way that it's being. If that's a monarch, if that's a new centralized power, even if that's a new right-wing thing, uh, I'm open to solutions that do not include uh, you know neo feudalism or complete destruction of humanity. Like I want that to be avoided. So anyone like Elon Musk and Curtis Yarvin and a few others who I think are talking earnestly in a way that seems to be pro humanity, uh, whether or not I agree with every single thing they say, or every single policy idea they have, is regardless. It's about what I think is making the best possible future, and I think Yarvin's part of that conversation. I think Yarvin and Thiel and Elon Musk and maybe a new counterculture, counterclass culture that's going to come out and might revitalize this conversation in a positive way is happening, and that's something to look forward to. Okay. Final thoughts? Anything you want to show, guys? Tell me what your channel is. Caleb, tell me where can we find you?
So I'm on Twitter at Caleb Brown 549. YouTube channel is Face Liberty and Praxis, FAITH Praxis Liberty. On YouTube, Spotify, and Osteotomism on Twitter at Osteotomism. Website is called Paleotomism because we changed names 2 weeks into making the site, and I can't figure out how to change the site name.
Because fucking Roman Catholics have got to be making everything goddamn complicated. You know?
Absolutely, it has to be complicated. It's not Catholic. I mean,
yeah.
But so yeah, paleotomism.com. We got like 4 articles coming out this week, so definitely basically follow, check those out. It's gonna be great. Also on Spotify for all roundtables. So yeah, I'm on a lot of stuff. Check me out.
Yeah, and on my end, just go to YouTube, subscribe to my channel, Los Libertinos. I got a cool episode coming out this Wednesday with James Pogue, that writer from Vanity Fair, and then after that, I have my a week after that, I'll have my 1-year anniversary show that I did with Buck Johnson, Matt Erickson, Kyle Anslone, and Andrew from Popular Liberty, and it was a good episode. So yeah, these next 2 episodes that are coming out, check them out, subscribe.
Fire.
Jingle the fire. So yeah, and for sure, follow me if you want Texas to win a World Cup. It's going to happen in our lifetime, and that is my bit that I got going on.
Texas is gonna win a World Cup just by itself. You're basically a Yarvinite just because you're hoping for patchwork, so Texas can like split off to be its own country, and then win like the Cup of America or something like that, right?
That's it, man. Yeah, that party will be bad. I hope you guys make it out when that final, man. We come over here. And
I just want to, as long as you can just shout out sort of more Latino, like go. Oh, yeah, I know you.
Oh man, you had that in you, man. Luis taught you good, man.
Luis taught you good, man. That's why this is why I didn't recognize you for a second, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for coming out here. It's always a pleasure. It's always an honor. I hope we've clarified or muddied the waters more. And thank you, folks. Thank you for watching. God bless, and we'll talk again soon.